Yes, hello, it's Jason Louv. Welcome back to the Ultra Culture Podcast. My guest today is one of our all-time favorite guests, not only mine, but also the listeners, one of our most requested guests ever, Dr. Ralph Abraham, the mathematician and one of the inventors of chaos mathematics. Awesome guy, professor emeritus of mathematics at University of California, Santa Cruz, where I went to school and first became aware of him. Here's a bit from his Wikipedia. Ralph Abraham has been involved in the development of dynamical systems theory since the 1960s and 1970s. He has been a consultant on chaos theory and its applications in numerous fields, such as medical physiology, ecology, mathematical economics, psychotherapy, etc. Another interest of Ralph Abraham's concerns alternative ways of expressing mathematics, for example, visually or orally. He has staged performances in which mathematics, visual arts, and music are combined into one presentation. Abraham developed an interest in hip, quote-unquote, according to Wikipedia, hip, in quotation marks, activities in Santa Cruz in the 1960s and has a website gathering information on the topic. He credits his use of the psychedelic drug DMT for swerving his career toward a search for the connections between mathematics and the experience of the logos. Awesome guy. Not mentioned in his Wikipedia, he is obviously super interested in psychedelics and also magic and the work of Dr. John Dee, which is something that we have talked about a lot. And he said lots of very encouraging things about my John Dee book. We were corresponding a bit about the kind of my views on how Christian apocalypticism had shaped politics in America in that book. One of the closest guys to John Dee you will actually find alive today. Great guy, great conversation. We talked about his new mathematical modeling of extremism, and this was an unexpected conversation that went in a lot of unexpected directions, and you're going to dig it. So, before I turn you over to Ralph, Magic.me is the world's greatest school for magic, meditation, and mysticism. And I am working night and day, now with basically next to no help. I am working night and day, improving the site, making it 2020s compatible, souping it up, creating new content. We have some pretty interesting plans in the works, including new teachers. So keep an eye out for that. We will be announcing stuff very shortly. In the meantime, check it out. It's magic.me, magick.me. You can learn all kinds of great stuff there to impress your friends and relatives, like chaos magic, astral projection, divination, my new system of binary magic. We also have the greatest meditation course, in my ever so humble opinion, ever recorded, Mastering Meditation, which is on the site and teaches the Eightfold Path of Raja Yoga better than you're probably going to get it anywhere outside of India or Indian gurus who might be here. I stand by that statement. Magic.me, it's all there. Check it out. Magic.me, magick.me. All right, here's Ralph. Okay, thank you so much for being up for this. You're one of our most requested and favorite guests of all time. So I'm super happy to be talking to you again.
Well, thank you so much. The interview we did before, I would say, is one of the best. You're so good at this.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. What have you been up to since? Are you still in Santa Cruz, or what have you been up to?
Yes, I'm in Santa Cruz.
Well, maybe I should just ask, what has been occupying your mind lately? What have you been focused on?
Well, I'm working on a book, and this came out of my obsession with the news, I guess. I started watching the news more than usual about 5 years ago with the beginning of the Trump trouble, and I became more and more upset. So one thing that happened had to do with the anti-vax movement. And this divided the country, divided the state, divided the city, and even divided my family. So, for personal reasons, I got interested in the mechanics of this division. And I began writing a book on schismogenesis. This is maybe about a year ago. I think I began, I decided I was going to do a long article or a book trying to apply mathematics, especially topology and catastrophe theory, to this division problem. And then the problem escalated. So it was no longer just about vaccination opinions, but also about abortion, guns, and so on and so on. And the different divisions began to so kind of align. And so they're roughly the same people on the one or the other side of each one of the divisions. So that's when I began thinking more about the mathematics and the underlying dynamics of this problem. So I started a book which is now nearly complete. And the target of the book was a moving target. The problem kept escalating until finally it looks to me something like the onset of civil war.
Yes.
Or some catastrophic change in the organization of the United States political system. Some catastrophe either was imminent or had already happened. And so I kept adding chapters to the book, you see, in order to try to keep up with this moving target. And one of the chapters I was writing is about the madness of crowds, which I kind of identified this as one of a series of religious manias that had disturbed world cultural history for 500 years or something. And in my basic reference work on the madness of crowds, I came across this reference to dispensationalism, or I could call it Darbyism for short.
Yes.
And it's at that point that I remembered your book, and that you had introduced me to the idea that this religious division had been affecting American history since the Pilgrims arrived. So at that point, I wrote you asking, what do you think
Yes.
about what's happening?
I can't remember how I responded.
Yeah, well, you responded with an invitation to talk it over in this format.
Oh, right. Okay. That's right. Okay.
That's as far as we got with email.
So, well, my basic point in that book was dispensationalism, Darbyism, and apocalypticism has been the dominant narrative on the right in America for a long time, and certainly surfaced in the 1980s with the threat of nuclear war, and most disturbingly with politicians like Reagan and Bush Jr. taking being biblical literalists. Whether that still affects politics in America, I'm not exactly sure, and that would be interesting. I think that Trumpism, in a way, represents a break from that because it's more about nationalism, it's more about ethnic politics, and not really about religion, although certainly all of the religious dispensationalists threw their lot in with Trump because they thought he was their best bet to continue to get their agenda across and stay in power. So there was definitely a deal with the devil made, I think, in that regard. Mike Pence was certainly, however, the most probably Christian literalist politician ever to be in the White House. So that was happening as well. Although I finished that book right as Trump was being elected, and I haven't exactly, I think it's still too close to do a post-mortem on it. But I do think that there has been a marked break in the political of the politics in America on the right, from evangelical religion to ethnic nationalism, for sure.
Well, yes. So it's almost like two different dimensions on the behavior side have become entwined. And that's ethnic nationalism or racism and dispensationalism. So there is some mechanism at work in social dynamics which has coordinated these. Of course, one aspect is Trump trying to, or Republicans in general, trying to attract more voters and making deals with the devils and so on. There is another factor. See, I'm trying to make a model, mathematical model, for this phenomenon of divergence of opinion, ending up in total division. Based on catastrophe theory, which is kind of a universal topological model for this kind of process. And it requires identifying causative factors and behavioral results. So among causative factors, what has emerged as number one in my thinking is the rise and evolution of social media. So in social media, we have two effects. Well, several important factors, relatively new, which are disturbing the global political dynamic. One is the speed of diffusion of a novel idea across the entire network. Another is the population of bots, rapidly increasing just in the last couple of years. And so another one is disinformation, which means misinformation, which is deliberately intended to deceive. So social scientists have been onto this, as I recently discovered, and kind of mapped out the relative growth of these. And so the one effect of social media might be the support of this bifurcation or catastrophe, as it were, between nationalism and dispensationalism. So the alignment of the different factors is driven by an artifact of social media. I'm not saying this is what it is. This is a question that I'm trying to explore through discovering social science cliques that are devoted to such questions, discovering and reading them online, and thinking about my own history with social media. So it's just another factor to take into account, and it could be a dominant one. Just the speed factor. One of my reference books on civil wars calls social media an accelerant. So all what we're seeing is the natural process, but somehow has been accelerated and is now, because of social media, progressing so fast. The diffusion and transformation and recruitment of groups around an idea is now so fast that we, as humans, can't even follow it.
Yeah.
We need our own army of bots in order to plot out what's happening. And ironically, these social scientists are busy making bots to do experiments online. It's from the technical point of view, a very exciting time and amusing and interesting phenomenon to watch. But as far as what's happening on the ground, I am really petrified as what's happening to American politics and very afraid that we're going to lose democracy. And there may be even no escape in terms of moving to some other country, because it's actually a global phenomenon, perhaps accelerating most rapidly in the United States because of the exceptional popularity of Facebook and Twitter in the United States.
It seems to me that that's super fascinating. It seems to me that in terms of things that are quantifiable that could be worked into that, a major one would just be demographic numbers, because it seems to me that one of the biggest anxieties that has driven people to vote for Trump is, an underlying anxiety there is the fact that white people will be a minority in America by 2050. And so it seems like the shifting demographic balance would definitely be a factor.
Yes, and that's a factor which obviously is accelerated by social media.
So where are you at now with the theory? You're still working on it?
Yeah, the writing of the rough first draft is almost finished. I'm just working on the mathematical model. Now I have selected made the important decisions as far as the variables which will be represented. And they are fractionalization, or the tendency of new factions to evolve within the two parties. And social scientists have a measure of this, so their data I can find online in order to utilize in my model for factions. And another one is one of many measures that could be chosen to represent as proxy the diffusivity of social media. And I'm taking there the simplest statistic, which is the total penetration of global media into the world human population. And here again, I have very good numbers online. Those are the so-called control parameters in my model. And for behavior, I've decided just lately to adopt political violence in the United States.
Mm.
And there's a very useful measure, amazing measure that just emerged in the last couple of days after the attack on Paul Pelosi, when the news media were broadcasting this data, broadcasting data on the number of threats received by members of the US Congress. So the Capitol Police have been accumulating this number because if a member of Congress receives a threat, they immediately notify the Capitol Police, which has the responsibility to evaluate the threat and see if it's worth sending a team out to intercept or intervene in the threat situation. And so the Capitol Police have been broadcasting this number since 2016. So throughout the Trump years, you have these numbers of threats reported by members of Congress to the Capitol Police, and they have increased tenfold from 900 per year to 9,000 per year.
Wow.
And the increase is not linear, but let's say approximately linear. So you could kind of project it into the future if you wanted to. And so that I'm taking as the behavior variable. In other words, the social media accelerate process inherent in factionalization of coalescing into discrete groups in opinion space, let's say, with increasing blank space in between the populations of believers of these different philosophies. And then the result of this distance is increase of political violence. As we have seen, there is a precipitation from political violence into everyday, ordinary violence, as we have seen in Santa Cruz, where I live, which is a small, sleepy beach community on the periphery of the highly technical San Francisco Bay Area. And we have seen the violence in the streets, especially stabbings and shootings and home invasions, increasing also by a factor of 10 over the same time period. So there's some kind of a precipitation from the political process, or at least contemporaneous, coordinated with political process, in which the whole culture, American culture, and perhaps global world cultural history, in the increase of violence and what Obama calls the decrease of civility. So we have civility and violent axis, which obtains on every level, like road rage, local crime, drug crime, school shootings, and so on. All these things that are on the upsweep at approximately the same rate are somehow synchronized. Somehow, and perhaps because of social media. Social media is global, it's extremely rapid, and its effect is very similar to broadcast news. But increasingly, people are not watching broadcast news or reading newspapers as much as they are following news on social media, which is propagated not by any kind of broadcasting, but just by the diffusion process, in which an idea which attracts more rapidly posters or reposters among the nodes of this gigantic neural network, which is social media. This mechanism tends to coordinate these different social functions. So it coalesces into kind of an avalanche of world cultural history toward a train wreck.
I have a, I have a, I have one question. Like this is super fast. I have one question, which is, does there appear to be correlation in upticks of violence with actual news events or political events occurring in the real world, or is it just a function of spread of social media? Meaning, are people completely disconnected? Is this still connected to actual events, or is it just people responding to social media itself?
Maybe this is just a private opinion of mine. But for the increase of violence and the coordination of different aspects of violence, I see Trump in the center. For example, right at the beginning, either in his campaign or the early part of his presidency, he was asking his adherents to physically attack protesters or people who disagree. So an increase of violence was intentionally introduced into the natural evolution of things. Over and over again, Trump said, I'd like to smash him in the face, take him out, beat him up, lock her up, hang him, and so on. Has been a litany in public speeches and presentations reported by the broadcast media, and also commented extensively on social media, in which until very recently, Trump has been hyperactive on Twitter. and soon maybe again. Probably his influence will never be what it was during the 4 years of his presidency, but certainly that is one of several factors that distinguishes the United States from other countries and their political histories.
Did you follow the recent controversy with Kanye West?
Well, yes. I'm Jewish, so of course I've been very sensitive to the news about the increase of anti-Semitism, and the racism against African Americans is of course the worst, and has been a dominant feature of American politics since day one. And we thought great progress was made in the 1960s with the Civil Rights Act and so on, and it was great progress. And now we see actually a kind of subsistence, a retrograde motion on that front, or at least more and more of the reality of racism in America has been revealed in the media and in daily news. So I think the United States it has these unique factors. The basis in slavery, the original religious slant toward dispensationalism, and also the leading the world in growth in the population of the smart media adherents. So, according to this view, which I'm not a historian, a political scientist, or anything like that, I'm only reading and following publication on the World Wide Web because of wanting to inject some mathematical insight into our historical process. But according to this view, anyway, if America is leading in these various factors which are fundamental to the political dynamic, that means that other countries will be following a similar trajectory as they subscribe increasingly to social media due to the explosive popularity of cell phones. And we see in current events some of this taking place as a sequelae of American history in the UK, in France, and Germany, and Israel, and so on, maybe in Eastern Europe as well. So fascism on the rise, a question that experts will have to discuss. I can't go further than I have about the role of social media in this advance of fascism worldwide. These are questions to be addressed by experts. I have seen some suggestions from political scientists studying social media that if there is a way to introduce friction to the diffusion of information in social media, for example, by putting a tax on reposting, adding friction would slow down social media, and whereas that will be anathema to corporate and big business users of internet advertising. It might be one of several ideas that might be tried experimentally, say in smaller countries that are sensitive to this dynamic, like Iceland, for example, or Norway, or Israel, perhaps, or even in the Ukraine, if it survives. There might be some way out. Otherwise, it is just up to Elon Musk and other multi-billionaires who can control the decisions of the social media platforms, then I'm afraid the disaster is inescapable.
Hmm. One question that I have, and I've been thinking about this recently, is considering this on total world historical timeline. It seems My question is this different from previous periods of history in the sense that it seems like each new communication technology brings with it political turmoil automatically? And the point that I considered recently was the printing press gave us the 30 Years' War and the 100 Years' War. And it could be argued that radio it played a big part, and film also played a big part in the rise of fascism in the 20th century. So is social media different in that, or like unique within history in that sense?
No, I agree with you. Social media is more of the same. See, radio has only been with us for 100 years or so. And the internet started about roughly 50, 60 years ago. Somehow the timeline of technical advances is accelerating, so that the interview between catastrophic introductions of new media, of new technology, is decreasing to the point that we can no longer respond or try to control the bad effects of the technology. We had the internet, 1960s. The email got started in 1980. The World Wide Web, 1990, and social media just in these past few years. And new technologies emerging in cyberspace are difficult to analyze or detect. Like, we didn't see social media coming. We thought it was going to be the greatest thing for the spread of good ideas. And so there are already new technologies which we are highly aware of, like maybe DNA-based, virus-based cyber war, bioweapon-based technologies that are deployed. New technologies are emerging, which are only discovered or seen, observed by specialists who are considered off the edge of official science or engineering. So people who are experimenting with devious technologies, and other similar people who are watching and observing. And some of these will eventually work and have an effect and be deployed on a massive scale. And only then, too late, will we realize what's happened. For example, social media we cannot rewind history and start off on a different track. And even if the speed of diffusion on social media could be mitigated on the level of the major corporations controlling big platforms, there still will be the dark web, as it were, the experimental domain of bad technologies. Maybe this is too paranoid. I don't know, but we never visualized, never imagined the use of the dark web in terms of pornography and drug distribution, human trafficking, or whatever. the balance between the good and the evil aspects of cyberspace, of social media, and the World Wide Web, tipping, with, crime has a more rapid evolution. So the scale is always tipping as the evil applications. The same with mathematics and theoretical physics and so on. Look at nuclear winter scenarios that we still are suffering. Once the genie is out of the bottle, it's hard to stuff it back in again. So we have in cyberspace, we have dangers never imagined, which are on rapid growth scale right now. And we'll see as cyber warfare develops how clever the engineers are in devising Maleficent.
It seems to me that kind of I think you touched on this. It seems to me the next frontier is probably biotechnology and the merging of biotechnology with information technology. I was talking to somebody recently, an engineer, who was saying that they've gotten chips. So chips are so advanced now that the next step for chip design is putting human genetic material in them to encode information directly into DNA within a computer chip, which is interesting. But there's a lot of frightening things on the horizon there. I think one of the scariest things for me is the potential combination of genetically targeted bioweapons with ethno-nationalism. And that would be a nightmare scenario. But also in terms of social media, Elon Musk is talking about Neuralink. There seems to be at least some type of push to integrate the internet within our own minds, or at the very least, maybe glasses, worn internet access. The idea of the internet becoming less something that you look at a screen and more that's just ubiquitous within our environment. Everything's connected to the internet. There's projected information everywhere. And I noticed certainly with younger people in their 20s, they all only use phones. They don't have desktop computers. They don't really even have laptops, which is crazy to me. But that seems to follow, you mentioned the spread of the internet around the world is on mobile phones. And that seems to be the current medium. But I think the mobile phone will probably be phased out into something that is more either integrated with the human body or just ubiquitous within the environment. At which point there'll be, reality will be not the same. And we're also with artificial intelligence now seeing the generation of video and images that often are indistinguishable from reality or from things that people have created. I think that artificial intelligence, as it evolves, will not only change the future, but will change the past, because it'll change all of our media, our representations of the past. Things will be colorized, things will be upscaled into 4K. Our perception of the past will constantly be changed by technology as well. So we'll be marooned with no connection to a world outside of technological interference. Maybe that's always how it's been. I don't know.
Well, I think that's right. It's already underway. The dangerous effects of AI already evident in social media, smart media, because the bots are manifestations of AI in imitating human behavior with better and better realism. So it's social scientists are able to count the number of bots on social media by deploying bots of their own that can detect, but harder and harder to detect the difference between a bot and a human with the Von Neumann test. sorry, the Turing test.
Hmm.
So AI is already just through social media, just as manifest in mobile phones around the world, already blurring the boundary between fact and fiction. In fact, there may not be any boundary between fact and fiction. We can never tell when we get information online whether it's fact checking is so difficult. So there are professional fact checkers out there still giving us some kind of estimate on the balance between information and misinformation on social media. But it's increasingly difficult to tell, as you mentioned, with these photos and videos that are so realistic. It's hard uh, to discover that they are in fact fictitious. So it's already underway, and I don't know if anybody is watching. What kind of bots? I mean, bots are there are bot kits, right? Anybody with a mobile phone somewhere in Africa or wherever
Hmm.
can design bots and deploy them by the thousands
Yeah.
on smart media.
On the other hand, it seems to me that artificial intelligence is possibly the only Hail Mary pass with content curation, and that seems to be where the big social media companies are going. When Mark Zuckerberg was was testifying before Congress, he was saying that they're trying to work on artificial intelligence that can stop, for instance, the spread of hate speech or calls to violence, but they just haven't been able to get they haven't been able to produce it yet. That's they may be lying. They may. I think it's probably pretty easy to design a system that does that just based on certain keywords, but and they do like, for instance, Facebook profits from the spread of hateful material, but because it just spreads so much more quickly. So what's going on there, I don't know, but it does seem to me that artificial intelligence is the only way to maintain any modicum of civility, because the world has never been instantaneously connected in this way before, and people are people, and people change and have different moods from moment to moment. There are a million different people throughout their lifetime, and often people can have bad moments and hateful moments, and um, I don't think it's possible for human beings to curate that much information. It would have to be done by artificial intelligence, and it seems to me that that's the only option at the moment.
Well, option it is, but as you say, humans are humans. So I think the social scientists have figured out and have measured um, the preference of humans for misinformation. So
Mm,
hate speech is more popular than loving messages. Like we rarely see good news in news media. Um, the New York Times or the Washington Post, the Guardian. I mean, obviously they have to attract viewers, and bank robberies and nuclear tests and so on are just way more popular than so many good things that are happening. So um, bots that can be helpful will be engineered and created, but will they be used? I think they may be used a little bit in order to show
mhm,
an effort to comply with governmental regulations. Um, but because of human appetites, that this tilt toward evil is just destined to continue on and on. Maybe in the 1960s, we had our hopes that psychedelics would create a breakthrough in morality and like the Beatles, all you need is love, love, love. So it didn't work out that way, and the trend is bad. But the hope that I have is for basically what you could call a miracle, in that a coming generation just now being born will have an extra mutation, which is beneficial to peaceful and loving society worldwide. We need a new kind of human, and that is actually possible. And I think we wouldn't be here today without the several miracles which are part of our world cultural history.
Mm.
So, in other words, hope is for magic, and certainly not for technology or politics. We need the birthing of a new humanity. Otherwise, the human experiment on planet Earth probably will come to an end. In fact, the destruction of the biosphere is now so far that we can never recover.
What would that new humanity look like, do you think?
Look exactly the same and behave differently, and maybe psychedelics will still. I mean, psychedelics is a kind of a bioweapon for the betterment of human society. So the fact that psychedelics are increasingly legalized around the world might have a beneficial effect, might precipitate a miracle, or be related to one anyway.
That would be great.
I don't know. I'm obviously I'm in a black mood at the moment.
I have been for a long time. I think everyone is.
Well,
Yeah. One thing that did you follow
well,
the Facebook whistleblower recently? There was a woman that worked for Facebook that came
no.
out. It was interesting. It was a woman who worked for Facebook, and she came out. It was after the congressional hearings, and gave, at least testimony that Facebook intentionally allows, uh, you know, uh, the worst types of speech to spread, often because it's just more profitable and spreads faster. But one of the things that she said that was really disturbing is that they've noticed that what's happening is, and I'm sure this plays, maybe this could be modeled with your model, with your formula. She said that what's happening is that as people become more and more polarized around the world and become more and more extreme in each direction, that the politicians in countries are forced to adopt their policies to those extreme opinions in order to get reelected. So that at that point, and this is a worldwide phenomenon. It's not just the U.S., it's a worldwide phenomenon. So at that point, politics is downstream of social media, which is a frightening thought.
Well, I think she's very wise. That seems to be what's happening, and there are so many people working in these companies, and there are relatively few whistleblowers. So whistleblowers should somehow be rewarded, because that's a huge step in a positive direction, is to identify these dynamics which are at work in corporate headquarters around the world. So I think there's still some room for optimism. The future is not ours to see, but it's very difficult to think of anything one can do as an individual to improve the situation, other than, as they say, going out and voting. So what I'm doing is a very long shot, proposing mathematical tools for better understanding of the dynamics underway. And this is all I can do because I'm a mathematician and nothing else. I don't know history, I don't know political science, but in trying to apply mathematics to history or political science, I have to do my best to read up a little bit, some basic books, and proceed as far as I can. This is the idea of my book on schismogenesis. And it's all I can do, but it's also quite hopeless because there is hardly anyone around who can read mathematics or is willing to try to read any book or article with the word mathematics associated. Is probably not going to have a great effect, even among mathematicians. We've seen this over the years. I have complained in writing about the misuse of mathematics, and mathematics seems to be more successfully misused than used. For example, the IPCC, the Climate Committee of the United Nations, frequently publishes graphs which are produced by mathematical models, which, because of chaos theory, we know can only predict according to the information that's put into the model. And so a practically any graph can be created which pretends to be, which is the result of a mathematical model. But mathematical models, because of what we know from chaos theory, cannot be predictive in any kind of long run. They only provide a kind of a gymnasium for exercising your intelligence in complex systems. We're living in a very large and complicated dynamical system, and mathematics is one way to just get a tiny edge in understanding it. And you can train your brain to be better at understanding complex dynamical systems. But using mathematics, you cannot predict anything in the long run. So the idea of the world's oceans rising 200 feet in the next 20 years or something like that is total baloney, as they say.
So so you're saying that could go any way. There's no way to model global warming.
That's right.
Huh.
And I do think global warming is going to continue, and it might stop, and it might even eventually be reversed. But there's no way to tell on the basis of mathematics what is going to happen, or on the basis of theoretical physics or geoengineering or something like that. Any effort to intervene in the dynamics through geoengineering or something is bound to produce a totally unpredicted result, like social media produce a totally unpredicted result. And the unpredicted results keep on developing faster and faster. It will be a challenge
Yeah,
for young people.
we talked about that in the last. I remember we talked about that in the last podcast. You said that the mathematical prediction was impossible, and I never heard that before. And I was actually really excited about that because it suggested that the world cannot be controlled by predictive modeling, which was it, particularly in a world that's going more and more towards, AI assisted social engineering and that type of thing was very hopeful for me and also very funny. Particularly when you think about financial traders trying to model markets. But with that said, I'm curious about, I mean, a lot has happened since we last talked. There have been a lot of, black swan events that I think not nobody, but, people could have predicted a global pandemic. People could have predicted Putin, starting a war. Perhaps they could have even predicted Trump. But these were all maybes out on the periphery, and now they've all occurred. And so we've gone through some major major events that have transformed society almost overnight. And we live in and so I'm curious what your thoughts are on that from a mathematical perspective.
Mathematical perspective doesn't get you very far in predicting the future. The stock market trades based on mathematical models can actually work to some extent because the mathematical models are predictive in the very short term. It's only in the long term that chaos obscures our vision of the future. So the black swan events, of course, will continue to be unpredicted and surprising, and sometimes even malevolent. As for example, green energy, like hydrogen power, is a very, very optimistic, or some kind of clean nuclear technology like tokamak or fusion machines. Maybe we'll read in the newspaper tomorrow that a fusion machine at Princeton or in Israel or somewhere has been successful. So the underlying dynamic, I think, the fire that heats up the dynamics and evolution all over the planet is the population explosion and leveling off of the exponential growth of human population on the planet would be the most benevolent thing for the future. And I see hardly any hope in that direction, although experts predict that in 50 years or something, it will top out and start declining. In that case, people will have to figure out how to handle the decline.
That's not very long from now.
Oh, no, it's not very long from now. And I don't know what the future holds, but I think the improvement of the global situation requires, first of all, an intent on the part of the human population, the global polity, intention and goodwill, and a willingness to sacrifice the grip of capitalism on the planet's economy is a factor that can be addressed best by intentions of a large group of people that wanted change. The climate catastrophe, the climate emergency is presently our best hope for a change of intention worldwide. And we already see some countries that are striving in good directions, like Iceland or Canada or Australia, New Zealand. I don't know. There's hopes that human nature will evolve. That's the only hope, because the evil stuff, the running amok, is going faster and faster, and human consciousness is changing only very slowly. So a new development in technology, or more likely some kind of evolutionary leap in terms of the moral sense, the morality of a large population, subpopulation on the planet, is what's necessary. I mean, the problems are caused by humans and only can be changed by some sort of change in human nature. This has, of course, been the goal of various movements. I don't know, like John Dee and Crowley and so many magicians, theosophists, do-good scholarly societies like the General Evolution Research Group, the Lindisfarne Fellowship, and so on. So many efforts of well-meaning and highly intelligent and educated people have struggled and made proposals and fizzled away because of a lack of interest to the people who really hold the power. So we could hope for the 65 billionaires with morality who wanted to do ultimate good on the planet, something like that. It's not impossible.
Well, from at least, in terms of from my perspective, where I'm sitting, the conclusions that I've come to about what is possible, I will say that I think in terms of the efforts of the magicians, I wouldn't necessarily say that they fizzled. I think that if you just look on a longer time scale, they've been tremendously effective. Tremendously, if you think about the change that has been caused by just a few people over decades, and from where I'm sitting, the idea of magic is vastly more popular now than in the 90s or the 2000s, and I think the ability for my overarching interest right now in my life is using these same technologies, trying to harness them, whether it's artificial intelligence or social media, information technology, to spread those messages and to master those technologies and reverse them and turn them around and use them to spread the messages that at least I'm interested in spreading, which are in line with what you were just talking about. So I think that in a lot of ways, all this information technology is kind of like people discovering fire for the first time. And the question is, is it only going to be a minority of people that have access to the tool, or not? And at least for myself, I'm interested in learning how to use fire.
Yes, well, I think you're right. That in the long run, if we have a long run, then uh, technologies or methods of betterment that are already established can continue to have beneficial effect, reinforcing each other. So magic plus psychedelics plus meditation or meditative technologies, advances in consciousness, work of artists, and most especially the rise of women worldwide. Uh, these things in combination can really give hope in the long run. And all the things that I'm afraid of are short-term effects. I think mostly, yes, like petroleum energy sources definitely on the way out. Who would have predicted that? That we knew about solar power many years ago. But dangerous chemicals like Roundup are still in use worldwide, despite the fact that everybody knows how dangerous they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a fight between the moral advance and the economic situation, capitalism, greed in general. This is, I guess, angels and devils contest. Good versus evil is the big war going on. And which way we are going depends on what you're watching and what you're listening to,
Yeah.
I guess. So probably I've been too affected by the news recently, and I should spend less time watching news and more time in meditation. I think I'll take that as a carry away from this conversation.
Okay. Well, I'm I'm hopeful overall. I have to be, and I think, but the thing that makes me hopeful is just looking on a longer time scale. And the thing that I think about And it seems like it seems right now that all of the advances in the 60s are being undone, that, the idea of even democracy itself could be undone, the idea of the ideas of the Enlightenment could be undone, maybe. Um, but there's always, in the movie, the bad guys always close in the movie, and there's always a time when it looks helpless before the hero wins. And I also think on a long enough time scale, I mean, you think about like the spread of Christianity, where it took 300 years for it to really get off the ground. And in the meantime, everyone was being persecuted and so on and so forth. And so I do think that because of social media and just because of information technology, that we're just going to be seeing we're just going to be seeing the same cycles of world history, but played out on a much, much faster time scale. Like I think you were saying, similar in the ways to, for instance, the cryptocurrency markets move generally in the same patterns as the main financial markets, but just way faster because they're global and traded 24/7. I think it's kind of a similar effect with everything else, but it's the same basic cycles, just much, much faster and perhaps oscillating as well, faster. Um, I don't know if that's the right mathematical term, but I think you know what I mean. So I think that, there's always, I don't know. I'm hopeful, but perhaps in only in the long term. Longer maybe than I'll be alive. I don't know. So there's that.
Yeah, well, I thank you for that. I'm truly affected by your optimism, and I feel overall uplifted by our conversation. And I really admire the work you're doing, which
Thank
does
you.
benefit the global population and in the long-term future. And I've seen your dog in the video. You have a very beautiful dog.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I do too. I think I've learned more from my dog than anything else about the good side of the future and the possibility for um, nature, natural evolution, and biohistory of planet Earth has provided such a stable platform of beneficence that I can't imagine that a rampant rogue human population can actually do it in. However, the damage already done, more than half of the biosphere has really suffered um, extinction by humans taking over, through greed, the Amazon forest and all the habitats of animals, and quite a part, or in addition to global climate warming, doing destructive work on the biosphere, which cannot be reversed. So I think the idea of an optimism in the long run requires adjustment of the idea of the long run and how long a run we can actually have without dramatic change of human nature, economic and political organization of world culture. There you have it.
Okay. Well, thank you. That was very nice comments you made. Thank you. I think I am more cheery because I got a dog. He's a new puppy, but every morning I wake up and he's just
Yeah.
smiling at me and doing his antics. So I think that helps.
Yes. Love. I mean, they are they teach us about love, what it really is, and how easy it is. So, where is it you're living now?
I moved to Austin, Texas.
You were in LA, I think.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I'm in
I
Austin
see.
now. It's nicer
And
than
do you
LA.
like it there?
I do. Yeah, so far. Yeah, I mean, LA was truly apocalyptic before I left with the crime and fires and madness.
Yeah.
So I don't know how Santa Cruz is. I think San Francisco was pretty bad there, but Austin's pretty calm. A lot of nature. So
Yeah. Yes. There's.
All right. Well, thank you again for talking, and I hope to talk to you again soon on the show. And I'm looking forward to your
That
book.
would be my pleasure.
When will people be able to get your book, or should they just watch your website?
Yes, I'll announce on Facebook, which I use for announcing books, um, and on my website. I have to decide between self-publishing and a real publisher. And so far, my last 10 books or so have all been self-published. And I have self-publishing wired, but sales are very slow. I just accept that. The thing, if I go with a regular publisher, then the delay between finishing the manuscript and actually the appearance of the book is something like a year or more. And I'm maybe in a hurry to at least get a first draft out by self-publication. And that would be pretty soon, certainly before the first of the year.
Great.
So I'll let you know, or I'll send you a copy if I can.
Oh, yes, please. Yeah, we can do another
Because
podcast.
I very much need feedback, and few people will read it, and even fewer give me feedback.
I'm super interested. I'm.
So
It sounds
look
very
for that
important.
soon.
It sounds like very important work. I'm super interested, and I can't wait to read it when it's out.
Great, thank you very much. I'm encouraged.
All right, thank you again, Ralph, for being on and for all the you said nice things. I appreciate it. All right, talk to you later.
My pleasure. I do appreciate you. Ciao.
All right, hope you really enjoyed that. I definitely had a lot of fun in that conversation. Meet us at magic.me, magick.me, my school for magic, meditation, and mysticism, where you can learn all the skills you need to unleash your true self. I will see you in class, and until next time, hang in there.